Today we're diving into the dark origin series, Rumpelstiltskin, The Twisted Tale. You might think you know this classic fairy tale, but there's a lot more to it than a magical little man spinning straw into gold. We're going to explore the controversies and hidden meanings behind this seemingly simple story. So, let's unravel the golden threads of Rumpelstiltskin and see what we find. What is the story? Rumpelstiltskin is a classic German fairy tale, first published by the Brothers Grimm in 1812, though its roots stretch back much further. The story begins with a poor miller who boasts to the king that his daughter can spin straw into gold. Intrigued and greedy, the king locks the miller's daughter in a room filled with straw, demanding she turn it to gold by morning or face execution. In her despair, she's visited by a mysterious little man, Rumpelstiltskin, who offers to spin the straw into gold in exchange for her jewelry. This pattern continues, with Rumpelstiltskin helping her again when the king demands more gold, but this time asking for her firstborn child as payment. Desperate, she agrees. After marrying the king and having a child, the now queen is horrified when Rumpelstiltskin returns to claim his payment. To save her child, she must guess his name within 3 days. Through cleverness and luck, she discovers his name, and upon revealing it, Rumpelstiltskin becomes enraged, in some versions tearing himself in half. The tale imparts moral lessons about greed, honesty, and the dangers of making rash promises. Let's start with the moral landscape of Rumpelstiltskin, because it's far from black and white. Many critics argue that this story lacks clear moral lessons, which is pretty unusual for a fairy tale. Think about it. We have a father who lies about his daughter's abilities to gain favor with the king. We have a king who threatens to execute a young woman if she can't perform an impossible task. And we have a young woman who agrees to give away her firstborn child to save her own life. Yet none of these characters face any real consequences for their actions. It's a story full of selfish, unethical behavior, but without the typical fairy tale comeuppance. This moral ambiguity has led to a lot of debate about what, if any, lessons we're supposed to take from this story. Are we meant to sympathize with any of these characters, or is the tale a commentary on the often murky nature of morality itself? Now, let's talk about how Rumpelstiltskin deals with gender, because it's pretty problematic by modern standards. The story has been criticized for its portrayal of gender roles, particularly in how it treats its female protagonist. The miller's daughter, who later becomes queen, is largely passive throughout the story. She's manipulated by the men around her. Her father uses her for his own gain. The king threatens her life, and Rumpelstiltskin exploits her desperation. She has very little agency of her own, with her fate being decided by the actions and decisions of the male characters. This portrayal reinforces traditional gender stereotypes of women as helpless and in need of rescue, even if that rescue comes at a terrible price. It's a representation that many modern readers find troubling, especially when we consider the messages it might send to young audiences. One of the most ethically troubling aspects of Rumpelstiltskin is how it deals with the issue of consent, particularly when it comes to children. The central conflict of the story revolves around an agreement to give up a child, an agreement made before the child is even conceived. This raises some serious ethical questions. Can a parent consent to give away a child that doesn't yet exist? Is it morally acceptable to treat a child as a form of payment or property? These questions become even more complex when we consider that the agreement was made under duress. The miller's daughter only agrees to give up her future child because she's facing execution. It's a dark and ethically murky situation that's pretty heavy for a children's story. This aspect of the tale has led to a lot of discussion about consent, the rights of children, and the ethical implications of the choices we make in desperate situations. Now we're getting into some really controversial territory. Some interpretations of Rumpelstiltskin suggest that the character may embody anti-Semitic stereotypes that were common in European folklore. The idea of a mystical, greedy outsider who's obsessed with gold and wants to steal Christian children, these are unfortunately familiar anti-Semitic tropes. It's important to note that this interpretation is debated, and not all scholars agree. However, it does raise important questions about the cultural context in which these stories were created and how we should approach potentially problematic elements in classic tales. Should we dismiss these stories entirely, or can we use them as a starting point for discussions about prejudice and stereotypes? Let's talk about the titular character himself, because Rumpelstiltskin is more complex than he might appear at first glance. While he's often seen as the villain of the story, some interpretations paint him in a more sympathetic light. After all, he's the only character who actually keeps his word throughout the tale. He helps the miller's daughter when she's in desperate need, asking for payment as any worker would. And when she can't pay, he offers her another option. Yes, asking for her child is extreme, but is it any worse than the king threatening to execute her? Some readers even see Rumpelstiltskin as a tragic figure, a lonely, magical being who perhaps wanted a child of his own to love. This ambiguity in Rumpelstiltskin's character has led to many reinterpretations and retellings that explore his motivations and backstory. The climax of the story revolves around guessing Rumpelstiltskin's name, and there's been a lot of debate about what this name might symbolize. Some scholars argue that names held magical significance in certain beliefs, and that knowing someone's true name gave you power over them. Others see the name as a reflection of Rumpelstiltskin's nature. In some versions, it translates to something like little rattle-stilt, possibly referring to the noise of the spinning wheel. There are even some pretty out-there theories, like one that suggests the name is a coded reference to a type of German goblin. While some of these interpretations might seem far-fetched, they show how even small details in fairy tales can be full of hidden meanings and open to wide-ranging interpretations. So there you have it, the tangled web of controversy surrounding Rumpelstiltskin, from its morally ambiguous characters to its problematic gender roles, from questions of consent to potential hidden meanings. This simple fairy tale is anything but straightforward. It's a reflection of the times it was created in, a complex narrative that's open to multiple interpretations, and a story that continues to spark debate today. The next time you hear this tale, or any fairy tale for that matter, remember that there's often more going on beneath the surface. These stories have the power to shape our understanding of the world, for better or worse. What do you think? Is Rumpelstiltskin a problematic relic of the past, or does it still have value for modern audiences? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into fairy tale controversy, hit that like button and subscribe for more content like this. Until next time.